All right. All right. Everybody, thank you. Thank you for coming back. Thank you for tuning in. I took a few days to reflect. Had a little thing happen when I released my last video, which did pretty good, on the ventilators. It was called, Are the Ventilators Killing Patients? Yes, the ventilators are killing patients, apparently. Check that video out. It's doing really well. In fact, it was done basically by me showing doctors down in the field speaking out against the treatment. Now, one got pretty dark, one said, hey, I think we need to revise what we're doing, and one was like, they straight don't care about what's going on in New York. They are just hooking people up to these ventilators, and they walk away. And okay, it becomes a horror show after that. Watch that video. So what happened was I was going to let that go and move on, but other videos started to surface. So these doctors are surfacing, crying out for help. Well, one of the videos apparently was so edgy that they took my video down, and I got one of these beautiful things. Where is that? Boom. A letter from YouTube. What do we have here? It's probably a little small, so I'm going to read it to you. As you know, our community guidelines describe which contact we allow. We don't allow on YouTube. Your video, part 2. The video was called Part 2. This shows very scary evidence of why things are so bad in NY, or New York, was flagged for us to review. Flagged. Now that makes me wonder too, did a person flag it? Because I have a 100% thumbs up rate so far, but I have millions of enemies, so I'm sure that probably either the AI flagged it or a person flagged it who doesn't like me. Either way, it doesn't matter, because it says, now upon review, we've determined that it violates the guidelines and we've removed it from YouTube. So we know that this might be disappointing, but it's important to us that YouTube is a safe place for all. If content breaks our rules, we remove it. If you think we've made a mistake, you can appeal, and we'll take another look. Keep reading for more details. But I quit reading at that point because I knew the rest was just going to make me mad. So I appealed and said, look, I just showed a video that was already on YouTube. It's cool if you take down my video, but don't do a community strike on me. And what did I get? Okay, I'm just gonna click over to that. I want you to see how stupid their answer was. Okay. Thank you for submitting your video. Appeal to YouTube. After further review, we've determined that your video is in violation of our community guidelines. They don't say where or why. You notice that? They never say why. They're just like, you're done. Okay, that's cool. That's fine. So I took a few days. I didn't want to make a video right away and react to that. And you know what, yesterday, guess who made me feel better? Who always makes me feel better? Tucker. Tucker, he gets a little edgy now and then, and I don't agree with everything he says, but this video made me feel so much better. So I ran over here and I started working on this little thing. Let's watch Tucker. Now I got to be careful because I don't want to get a second strike here, because he's got footage of some of the doctors that are being banned. But this video is so important. Guys, watch this. Here we go.
Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. Last night on this show, we played you a clip from a nearly hour-long video produced by two physicians in California, Doctors Dan Erickson and Artin Masihi. Likely many of you had already seen it. That video has had more than 5 million views on YouTube. In their presentation, the two doctors presented a flurry of data pointing to what we are currently learning about this virus and how it spreads. They recited pages of government statistics and then interpreted them in light of their own long clinical experience as doctors. At one point, they noted that the newly adjusted death rate in their state of California, which is much lower than anyone expected it to be, and they asked if government officials there should change their policies based on this new science. Watch.
We've seen in the state of California with a possible...
Okay, I'm going to pull the trigger on it right there. So this guy basically says, because if the AI hears this, I swear they're going to take it down and they're going to hit me again. So this guy says during this segment that there are 1,227 deaths in California, and that when you break it down, this is at the time, but when you broke it down at the time, that there was a 0.03 chance of dying, which is so ridiculously low that it's you can't shut the country down for something like that. Okay, so that's what's going on right there. So what I'm going to do is just move past that little part and back to Tucker, so nobody understands what I'm trying to do and trying to show you right here. Okay, we're going to continue. Here we go.
Out of work.
So whatever your view of the mass quarantines, and maybe you're enthusiastically for them, the questions you just heard are valid questions. In fact, they're critical questions. We should all be asking those questions, including and especially our policymakers. But as Dr. Erickson pointed out later in the video, dissent of any kind is no longer tolerated in this country. Fact-based honesty, which is the soul of science, is under attack, even in hospitals. Dr. Erickson described physicians being pressured to classify illnesses and deaths as related to coronavirus, whether they believe that to be true or not.
Okay, what he's going to do is talk again. I don't even want to show that, okay, because the AI is going to find me again. So the doctors are being pressured to add COVID-19 as the cause of death. Now, why would someone go on YouTube and try to expose something like this if it weren't true? I mean, all these doctors are putting themselves at risk. They're certainly not getting paid for any of this. They're just trying to... Now, these same doctors... these are European doctors. I think they're from Denmark, if I'm remembering right. I'm just doing this from memory, guys. Okay, Norway, maybe Norway. One of those two. Anyway, and they were comparing to Sweden and how, Sweden may have had it right because they have a herd immunity and their numbers weren't that far off. Anyway, so I want to move past this guy and I want you to hear what else Tucker says.
Pressure to test for flu. It's
ever. It's scary to think it takes place on a large scale in hospitals. He says it does. Viewers of Erickson's video were shocked and transfixed by this. They forwarded the video to friends who forwarded on to their friends. And suddenly, millions of people who have spent the last 6 weeks on a diet of Tiger King and internet memes were watching sober-minded medical researchers reading from charts of statistics. It's hard to recall a science video taking off like this one did. Not everyone was impressed by it. Some criticized the doctor's policy conclusions, and of course that's fair. Decent people have different opinions. We're not entirely certain what the perfect response to this pandemic is. Nobody is certain. There's no objective answer at the moment. At best, we can plod along with open minds and good faith. More informed debate is exactly what we need to make wise decisions going forward. Unfortunately for all of us, informed debate is exactly what the authorities don't want. They want unquestioned obedience, so they're cracking down on free expression. Last night, the doctor's video, the one you just saw, was pulled off of YouTube, the largest video hosting site in the world. It wasn't an accident. YouTube admitted doing it. The company cited a violation of, quote, community guidelines, and they did not apologize.
Sound familiar? That sounds like my letter. Community guidelines, and they don't apologize. They don't even give you the reason. That's why this video made me feel better and get me all fired up again.
Looking back, when all of this is finally over, and it will be, it's likely we'll see this moment, what YouTube just did, as a turning point in the way we live in this country, a sharp break with 250 years of law and custom. The two doctors' video was produced by a local television channel in California. It was, in effect, a mainstream news story. The video was not pornographic. It didn't violate copyright or incite violence or commit libel. It didn't break any law. The only justification for taking it down was that the two physicians on screen had reached different conclusions from the people currently in charge.
Yeah, and you know what? Again, a lot of physicians, these things are getting torn down. I know what flagged my video in my heart. I think I know. And I went looking for that video that I showed, which was called Doctors in the color BLA, I won't say a letter, and then K. That's the name of the video. If you can find that, it is very enlightening, but I'm afraid to even talk about it.
It was a form of dissent from orthodoxy. YouTube and its parent company Google have now officially banned dissent. The CEO of YouTube admitted that openly.
But then we also talk about removing information that is problematic. Of course, anything that is medically unsubstantiated. So people saying like, take vitamin C, take turmeric, like those all will cure you. Those are the examples of things that would be a violation of our policy. Anything that would go against World Health Organization recommendations would be a violation of our policy. And
ouch, that's killing me right there to even listen to, because we have found the World Health Organization completely lying. Not just dropping the ball. No one can be this stupid. No one's going to be a cheerleader for China and get caught in the lies with China. It's absurd. And what is this lady saying? That these videos, isn't there 1,000,001 home remedies on YouTube? Give me a break, lady. This is like the most ridiculous CNN nonsense. You're right at home at CNN with this nonsense. You ridiculous person. CEO of YouTube. Google, I'm so sick of you. I'm so sick of Google.
And so remove is another really important part of our policy.
So you're not just putting the truth next to the lie. You're taking the lie down. That's a pretty aggressive approach.
We're removing, quote, anything that would go against World Health Organization recommendations. It'll now be taken off the internet. Consider that for a minute. As a matter just of science, it's ludicrous. Like everyone else involved in global pandemic policy, the WHO has often been wrong in its recommendations. A lot of people have. In mid-January, WHO told us that coronavirus could not spread from person to person. In March, they told us that face masks didn't work. Those were lies, and they were welcome on Google's platforms. Doctors who are actually treating patients with the virus, meanwhile, have just been banned. So no, this is not about science. Censorship never is about science. It's about power. Big technology companies are using this tragedy to increase their power over the American population. They're working in concert with politicians in order to do it. Just today, Facebook removed an events page for a political protest in Michigan. Governor Gretchen Whitmer, who runs that state, was no doubt pleased to see it. Grossly mismanaging an entire state is a lot easier when citizens are not allowed to complain about it, and now they're not. Last week, Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg explained that protests like these are no longer protected political speech. They're, quote, misinformation.
How do you deal with the fact that Facebook is now being used to organize a lot of these protests to defy social distancing, defy the social distancing guidelines in states? Is somebody trying to organize something like that, does that qualify as harmful information?
We do classify that as harmful misinformation, and we take that down.
Ouch. You know what? The zombie takes it down. I've never seen someone so lifeless and controlled in my life. I mean, I recognize that one guy interviewing him as someone is full of fake news. I can't remember his name, but yeah, I didn't even see that part. I'm so sick of these big tech companies, really.
Harmful misinformation. That is a phrase familiar to anyone who has watched totalitarian regimes in any country. It's now how Mark Zuckerberg describes political opinions he doesn't like. Our free press exists to push back against obvious abuses of power like this one. It's the reason we have a First Amendment. It's the only reason we have a First Amendment. But suddenly our media are not concerned about freedom of speech. Reporters applaud our overlords as they punish us for disagreeing. You just saw it in that clip from CNN. That happens every day. Our media are no longer challenging power. They are colluding with power. And that may be why there's been so little critical coverage of the massive expansion of our surveillance state currently in progress. In the name of fighting the coronavirus, tech companies are now following you through your cell phone. They're watching you from above with drones. Those sound like paranoid fantasies. They are not. It's happening as we speak. Needless to say, our politicians approve of this.
How do you feel about the drones? look, at this point, we need to save lives, and it's really important that in public spaces, people are abiding by the directives.
Cory Booker goes along with anything Dem. He's like the worst of the Dems. He's among the dumbest idiots or traitors. He's either completely stupid or a traitor. He's right up there with the worst of them.
Yeah, we've got to do it. So what do we have here? We have big companies partnering with the government to spy on you without your knowledge. Americans locked in their homes, banned from going to church, placated with sedatives like weed and beer. Anyone who speaks up is silenced. Political demonstrations are illegal. Organizers are arrested. Only opinions approved by leaders, many of them unelected, are allowed on information platforms. Does that sound familiar? It sounds a lot like China. Of all the many ironies of this moment, so many of them bitter, the hardest to swallow is this one. As we fight this virus, we are becoming far more like the country that spawned it. We are becoming more like China. It's horrifying. And it tells you everything that our professional class enthusiastically welcomes this. Over the weekend, The Atlantic magazine published an article by two academics calling for an end to freedom of speech in America. Their model for an ideal system, the totalitarian government of China. Quote, in the debate over freedom versus control of the internet, China was largely correct and the U.S. was wrong, end quote. You ought to read the whole thing. Truly, you should. It's the future. We could quote from it from the rest of the show, but we'll give you just one more. Quote, significant monitoring and speech control are inevitable components of a mature and flourishing internet, and governments must play a large role in these practices to ensure that the internet is compatible with society's norms and values, end quote. Norms and values. Whose norms and values? Well, our leaders' norms and values, of course, but mostly their interests. Those in power are the ones our professional class seeks to protect, not the rest of the country. Freedom of conscience never endangers the public. It only threatens the powerful. It endangers their control. It hinders their ability to dictate election results, to loot the economy, to make policies based on whim for their own gain. No wonder our leaders have done such a poor job protecting us from China. They're on the same team. Dave Rubin is the author of the fantastic new book, Don't Burn This Book. It came out today. We're happy to have him on
I totally
tonight.
recommend you watch the rest of this video. I'm going to end it here because what we're talking about is digital book burning, really. And that's this guy's point. Don't burn this book. China has really infiltrated America on many, many levels. And when you look at my screen here, you see USA versus China. We are in a serious conflict with China. And dare I say it, we are at war with China. Now, what you're not really going to see on the news today is what happened with Mike Pompeo, I believe is the Secretary of State, and he made a speech today that, if you want to get ahead of me on the next subject, he made a speech today, and it's China's low LIC, which is a low impact conflict war against the U.S. We are at war with China right now. And we're in the middle of a civil war. We have two wars happening right now that are not, live fire wars, but these are very, very dangerous situations, both of them. So, let's talk about this in our next video. I really appreciate you for stopping by. Real quick, I have a couple of t-shirts at Daddy Brian's Merch. This is at teespring.com, and there's a logo shirt. There's a shirt that supports the opening of the economy that just says, we built up the economy once, we will do it again. Listen, guys, I really appreciate you for stopping by, and I hope you come back. Please comment below. Do you think we are at war with China. And I urge you to look at that Mike Pompeo speech. It's not making the news. It is huge, folks. Huge. We really need to talk about it. Thanks again for stopping. God bless.